It's interesting that it had the Von Miller conundrum up there, and then it ended off with the mini observations. That was kind of interesting. Facebook is on one, but nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, ARich, Akeem Richens. If you don't know me by now, please get to know me. This is the Founders Pod. I got my brother, no, not my twin brother, my other brother, Lance Nelson, in the building, covering the show, helping out with me. How you doing, Lance? What's going on?
What's up? And what's up, Bills Mafia? Back-to-back duties this week, Friday, Saturday night, but glad to be here. Always a great time hanging with you, sir. So let's get this thing going.
Yeah, man, and again, this is around the time where it's late June. It's what we call the dog days of summer. This is the time where if you have anything you want to do as a guy or as a sports fan, if you have to take out the wife, take them out now. If you have to take out the kids and spend time with the kids, take them out now. Do all the things you need to do during the dog days of summer, during the time the Buffalo Bills is off, and get your family time in and do what you have to do. Because when the season starts, we are all locked in and we're all big time Buffalo Bills fans. And mandatory minicamp has came and went, right, Lance? And it's getting close. It's not there yet, but it's getting close. I'm starting to get the feel of football back in the air because of this mandatory minicamp. And let me get some thoughts on some general thoughts on the mandatory minicamp from the Buffalo Bills. What you saw, what stuck out to you the most this past week during the minicamp?
Yeah, mostly just the talk about getting back to, the facility with everyone and just trying to become that close-knit group. Everyone was talking about getting to know their fellow man and not necessarily all about football the entire time. They have a little bit of a new playbook to learn, not necessarily new plays, not necessarily new verbiage, but there are going to be some different things, obviously. And so what I noticed mostly is just that effort to communicate and get to know the guy next to them and really be able to form that brotherhood as they get into the training camp when they're going to be bunking with these guys, right? So I think that's important, and really being able to click on a personal level first, and
Mm-hmm.
then take it onto the field and try to get everything down with the football stuff.
Mm-hmm. And this is why, as boring it may seem to us as fans, right? We're like, come on, we want to get to the shits already. We want to watch the pads, we watch the hitting. We don't care about the t-shirts and short stuff as much, but this is an important part of the process, right? The beginning phase. This is where you put and install whatever you need to install if you're a new coach. This is where you implement new plays and schematics. This is where you get a greater foundation in terms of what I have to do on offense or what I have to do on defense. And this is the installment part of the process. So I think this part is an important one and something that as much as we kind of want to shy away from because it is t-shirts and shorts, we cannot take lightly. And this is a very important part of everybody's process, especially the Buffalo Bills. And before I get started, if you're watching on Facebook, please give this a like, please give this a share. If you're watching on X or Twitter, please give this a like, please give this a repost. And last but not least, if you're watching on YouTube and haven't subscribed to the Built in Buffalo YouTube channel yet, please take a second, stop what you're doing, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here when you come back. And when you come back, we can deep dive into the discussion we are about to get into. And I want to start off with our number one guy, our franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. And I think this is an important part of the process for Josh as well. Going into his seventh season, he understands that this is a new team in terms of the amount of new players that's involved in this team. He understands that he is and his team is going through a transitional phase, right? They wouldn't call it a rebuild, but they'll call it a transitional phase. And because of that transitional phase, Josh Allen understands where he has to improve and get better. So my first question, Lance, is about our franchise quarterback. And as great as Josh is, do you think him working on his mechanics is a reflection of how aware he is of his shortcomings as a player? Right, Lance? And I want to elaborate a little bit before I throw the baton to you. And we all know, what do we see about Josh Allen the most? What is the haters? What are the haters going to put up there on the board for Josh Allen? Those interceptions, those turnovers. In 6 seasons, Josh Allen has 78 interceptions. That's about 13 interceptions per year. And he understands that that is a lot of the talk in terms of negative spotlight from Josh Allen, right? And I believe that he is working on his mechanics because he wants to be able to limit those turnovers because of the transitional phase he's going through, having an installment of new players. And I think he realizes that turnovers can be bigger, can be a bigger detriment to the team this year as opposed to years past. So, Lance, what do you think about Josh Allen working on his shortcomings and him being self-aware of the shortcomings he has as a quarterback?
Yeah, I think the interceptions are more mental processing than physical
Mm-hmm.
mechanics, in my opinion. But I'm not saying that they couldn't help that. But I don't think it's him putting the ball in in like the wrong spots necessarily as it is making the wrong decisions to throw the ball,
Mm,
or he does a fair amount of throwing the ball up for grabs in a third and long situation and half times and things like that. That inflates his interceptions and things like that. The biggest thing that I think is he bails out of the pocket too soon. A lot of people think more often than any other player does,
mm,
and that's not going to be able to happen for his entire career. So making these mechanical adjustments now for me reflects that he's going to continue to build his pocket presence, continue to make sure he can deliver that ball from where he needs to deliver it from, and he's not going to stop, doing what he does. So I think he's going to have to make sure his mechanics will allow him to do the things he wants to do. But I
mm,
I also think he really he's really going to want to be able to stay in there and deliver a ball more often than he currently has, and that may be the biggest, other than the interceptions. I think that may be his biggest criticism is he will start scrambling or start running around even if it's not going forward. Maybe he's going rolling to the right or left, trying to extend that play before he absolutely actually needs to. You know, his clock to start doing that kind of scramble drill starts very quickly. And it's successful for him to a point, but it gets to a point also where not necessarily his fault, but he also hasn't won the big game yet. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that's the reason. I'm just saying that if he's
Mm-hmm.
looking to improve one area,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's to be able to stay in there, deliver that ball. And to me, the mechanical adjustments and things make me think that he's going to want to do a little more of that. He wants to sharpen that up. It's not necessarily that he doesn't do it well or anything of that nature. He does most everything very, very well. But if you have to split hairs here and
Mm-hmm.
talk about the second best, give Mahomes his due if you want to call Allen the second best quarterback. You know, I think Josh Allen's the best football player purely in the NFL, pound for
Mm-hmm.
pound, just has all the physical tools you could ask for. But, you know, his mechanics hopefully make him think less about that sort of thing, make
Mm-hmm.
him think less about the pain or the different things that he's gone through, and
Mm-hmm.
let him focus more on that decision making that he needs to then prevent those interceptions, like you mentioned.
Right. And Vladimir, what I mean by shortcomings as a player, because I don't like to use like negative. I don't like to use those type of words. So I like to find other words and I use the word shortcoming or I use the word opportunity. And what I mean by that is not that Josh Allen has any overall shortcomings as a player, but there are opportunities where Josh Allen, the player, can be better in, and that one of those subjects or topics or opportunities can be the turnover department, the interception department, where he does have 78 interceptions over the course of 6 seasons, going into his seventh season, and I think that is very interesting stuff. You said, Lance, and I believe that Josh Allen has to come and calm down in terms of those turnovers, that turnover ratio, that interception ratio. I think he has to be cognizant of it a little bit, and he has to be aware that he can't do that as much as he did in years past because there are new players, right? And what happens when you have new players on a team, when you have new players in the system, when you have a new players that have to fit a scheme and understand a scheme, mistakes are going to be made. So being that those mistakes are going to be made when you are transitioning to new players. The one player, the core player that's been there, he wants to be able to keep his turnovers down because mistakes might be had around him. And when you're making mistakes as the quarterback, and then the players around you are making mistakes, that can compound as a team. And that's something that we don't want and we want to stay away from. And that's how you become a losing football team on the outside looking into the playoffs. So that's part of what I mean in terms of shortcomings as a player. But Lance, I like what you said with Josh Allen, but I want to go ahead and double back because Josh Allen is, from what I read, right, part of the reason why he changed up and why he is changing up his throwing motion a little bit is because he wants to become as efficient of a player as possible. Now, I know you spoke about decision making, but what do you think Josh Allen means when he says he wants to become as efficient of a player as possible? Is that accuracy? Is that decision making? What is it? What do you see?
I definitely think, you know, he had a few balls he wanted back, but I don't think overall that I worry necessarily about his accuracy. His, you know, completion percentage was down, I think 66.7 last year. I know previous years he's been a little bit higher than that, so he probably wants to get back um, to that. Um, it was a 2020 season there where he was at 70%,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, you know, he's gonna look to increase those numbers, you know, as his completion percentage, 68.4 was his highest in 2020. Sorry. So it's 66 last year. and he wants to get back up in that 69-70% completion percentage range,
Hmm.
which again, we're splitting hairs here saying how
Hmm.
can one of the greatest players in the league be even better?
Better,
And so
right?
there's nothing here saying that he's not great. It's like, but
Hmm.
the reason he is great is because he keeps driving, as you said here. He
Hmm.
keeps working on the little things. He has things. He said the greatest quarterback has issues with their throwing motion that he could point out, and that there's always this constant need to keep refining and making sure that you're when you talk about efficiency, I think he meant the physical compactness and the efficiency from a delivery standpoint to put the least amount of strain on his
Mm,
joints, on
I
his
like that.
muscles, on his tendons, and things like that. So his efficiency is saying, I need to be efficient with my motion because I need my body to last longer. Because we
Mm,
see him now playing through injuries year after year, and it's not necessarily preventing him from still doing great things, but he's still aware enough to say, look, I've got to try to make sure that when I'm out there, I'm in the least amount of pain, I'm in the least amount of discomfort as possible, and refining these motions is going to help him do that. And without refining these motions, I think he realizes that, he's going to be battling these things and could potentially hurt himself even further if he doesn't get it cleaned up. And that's basically just a self-awareness, evaluation of every little detail of yourself as a person, and that's really what drives greatness for these guys, and especially guys like Josh Allen, obviously going to be going into a season where, barring an unforeseen move here, he's going to be shouldering a lot of the success
all
on his
blame.
shoulders
Mm.
for this team. And I think he maybe is aware of that, and he wants to be able to make sure that he's again durable for this season, because he knows without him this team is not going to reach the success and the goals that they have set out for this 24-25 season.
And I think a part of progressing going into Josh Allen's seventh season is consistency, right? And I think that's a word that I may use a lot throughout the course of this show. Being consistent throughout the course of the season. I think Josh Allen wants to be that guy, wants to be that model of consistency. I think that as great as he is, he does have he has some streak tendencies in him. He could be a streaky player if we're talking about a basketball reference, or a streaky shooter if we're talking about a basketball reference, where he does have stretches where he is on highs to highs, and he does get on some lows. So I think this year would be an important year, a pivotal year in year 7 for Josh Allen in this transitional phase with the Buffalo Bills football team to be more consistent and show that consistency throughout the course of the season, through weeks 1 through 18 into the playoffs. So I think that is another thing that Josh Allen is cognizant of and is going to try to accomplish as well this 2024 season.
Yeah, for sure. Swan comes in wondering if the injuries to Josh's elbow and shoulder affected his accuracy. 100%. This is the whole reason why he's doing this
Mhm.
stuff. And so, yeah, that's the exact reason that he's going through these mechanical adjustments, is to prevent elbow injuries, to make it easier on his shoulder, because his shoulder is going to be what it is as he gets older and as he progresses through his career. It's never going to get better, let's say, as much as he throws the football. It's going to continue to be used, and as efficient as his throwing motion can be, is going to take the stress off that joint and take the stress off those muscles and tendons and everything that goes along with um, the throwing motion. So yeah, it's the injuries have played a big role in this, and it's exactly why he's the shoulder injury now is the most recent reason for these tweaks. But the elbow injury also, I think, he's played through the elbow and the shoulder, but those injuries are the exact cause of why he's going through these minor adjustments and things like that.
And, as much as I agree with that, the rest of the NFL, our peers is going to say Josh Allen's out there, he's healthy. They don't want to hear nothing about, shoulder injuries, right? So this is a season where, okay, if Josh Allen God forbid, does go through another issue throughout the season with his shoulder, how can he be better prepared to produce at a high rate even through injury? And I think that is where, mechanics will come into play. That is where the system and the offensive play calling will come into play, and that's where the overall growth of Josh Allen as a football player will come into play. So we'll definitely see what happens with Josh Allen, his progression and his mechanics this season. But Lance, I want to move on, right? In my opinion, now, I know that the running back position itself is not a premium position, because we like to use that word premium to positions, defensive end, edge, and list our premium positions. We know that running back is not that, is not a premium, but I do feel it can be important depending on who's calling plays. And being that Joe Brady is our offensive coordinator, our offensive play caller, I believe the running back position is an above average position in terms of importance in Joe Brady's offense. And when I see a guy like James Cook, who burst onto the scene last year, made the Pro Bowl for the first time in a few years, was a 1,000 yards rusher, first time in a few years since Shady McCoy. He burst onto the scene and he looks like that next very good back for the Buffalo Bills. But training camp starts, mandatory mini camp starts, and some of his opportunities and shortcomings he had last year are popping up early in this camp, where he's been dropping passes and he hasn't been that consistent player we need him to be, especially in a Joe Brady offense. So I might have answered it a little bit, but Lance, what would prevent James Cook from being a star, a bona fide star in this NFL?
Yeah, it's the clutch moments, right? It's got to be when this thing's on the line, when you have an opportunity to get in the end zone, when you have the opportunity to make big plays. Are you not making them? Are, let's talk about the one that sticks in my mind all the time is first play of the game last year. I believe it was the Denver game. I'll have to
Mm-hmm.
check. But you have a fumble immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and it just takes the wind out of the team's sails right away.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't have that. You can't have those situations where you're, putting the team behind like that. I'm
Behind
trying
the
to
eight ball,
see
correct.
what game that was. Yeah, it was Denver. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have the situational football down. You have to be able to. There's no good time to have a fumble or anything of that nature, but you absolutely have to make sure that you have yourself buttoned up when the plays are there to be made. And that's where I think he's going to go from just being pretty good or a really good running back to now becoming a great running back.
And so, do you think what James Cook, the opportunities he have, do you think it's a lack of concentration? Do you think it's a lack of mental focus, or is his hands just suspect? Because how I'm seeing it is, okay, James Cook had over 1,500 yards from scrimmage last year. When I look at Joe Brady's offense, it is running back friendly. In my
Yeah.
opinion, you can win offensive player of the year. A running back can win offensive player of the year in Joe Brady's offense. And when I see James Cook, I just see just too much concentration drops, the lack of consistency. Last year he had 6 drops and 4 fumbles, and in my opinion, for a all-star back, a Pro Bowl back that wants to take even another jump this season, that is unacceptable, and that is something that has to be fixed sooner rather than later because of the type of offense we want to implement from the Buffalo Bills standpoint. So I have concerns. I do think James Cook is good, but I have concerns with his consistency throughout the season, and I'm starting to question if he has natural hands, is a natural pass catcher, or he learned how to catch as he grew up to be a football player. So those are some concerns I have with James Cook. Let me get a rebuttal on that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's that, securing the ball,
Mm-hmm,
both in catching it and not fumbling. He didn't have a massive number of fumbles, but when he did fumble, it was just like couldn't have been a worse time most of the time there.
mm-hmm,
And then Matt Homan in the comments makes a good point about taking some volume away potentially from him with the use of Ray Davis.
mm-hmm,
The biggest thing with James Cook is he didn't score a lot of touchdowns either.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
what's going to make him a star in this league is having that same production and then having 8 to 10 touchdowns. Rather than I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns last year,
mm-hmm.
and let's
And
get the
that's
numbers.
and this is the year I'm looking at James Cook, and this is the year I find out exactly who James Cook is, what tier
Yeah,
in the running back pecking order he is. Is he a superstar? Is he a star? Is he a good player? Is he a
yep,
workhorse back? Is he a rotational back? I'm going to see where he is because Joe Brady in this system, if you think about it, in this system, Joe Brady, he likes to run the ball. He's going to establish that identity in running the football. He's going to establish that identity of checking down when he needs to and getting the ball in in his playmakers' hands. And when you look at how the Buffalo Bills team is constructed, right? We have talks every week on who's wide receiver one for the Bills and who's going to get the football and who Josh Allen can trust late in games. This should be where James Cook, if he's that player we think he is or we want him to be, this is where he should be able to rise to that occasion and be a star player and looked at as an elite running back in this NFL. And if he is not an elite running back in his NFL, it's because of the shortcomings he has as a player and not because of the system or because how Joe Brady calls plays, because he's going to get every opportunity in this offense to be the go-to guy, to be that man, to be one of the top running backs in the league, and it's going to be up to solely James Cook.
yeah. Well, let's look at designed runs over 15 yards last year, 10 of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So 273 attempts, and 10 of those runs go for 15 plus yards. So that's not a lot. And it's not like I said, there's 1,262 yards is great on the ground. I think he had a really good year last year, and if he stays at that and maybe increases
mm-hmm,
it just a touch, um, that puts him on a solid lead running back role. I think he's a solid lead running back. And
mm-hmm.
if you have the right
Solidly like it.
complementary, if you have the right complementary guy with him, that
Mm-hmm,
makes the backfield really, really good. And I
mm-hmm,
think Ray Davis can be that complement that makes this running back room really, really good. Ty Johnson is icing on the cake for that for me.
mm-hmm,
And then let's see what these other guys, Darrington Evans and Frank Gore Jr., can do as far as an impact on this team. But when you get the opportunity, we know he at least dropped 2 touchdowns, and he only had
mm-hmm,
touchdowns total last year, 4 receiving, two
he dropped
rushing,
two. Mm-hmm,
and dropped two. And so for him, is in order to be a star, he's got to not drop those touchdowns,
mm-hmm,
and there's going to be drops. I mean, we're all human, we're all imperfect beings, so there's going to
mm-hmm,
be drops, but I mean,
mm-hmm,
it can't be a drop when you're on your way to the end zone. If it's a second and short and you try to swing pass, he drops it, whatever, and it leads up to a third and two.
mm-hmm,
I have faith in the offense to pick that up, and whether they do or not is what it is. But I think like when it's 3rd and 7, you got the ball over the middle, and you
mm-hmm.
just try to run before you catch it, and now we're punting. that's a situation you can't have with Cook, and we'll see. I think year three going in, home makes a good point. Guys just either get it or they don't. Maybe in year three, and I think this year, I heard people say that that his level last year was about as best as you could hope for him. Like
Mm,
that's where
that's a
he's going to
ceiling.
be
That's
at,
a ceiling.
and that's
Mm,
who he's going to be. I disagree
mm.
completely with that. I think he like you we just discussed here, he's got another level to take it to, and it's only going to be with getting in the end zone a little bit more and being a little bit more secure. Year one, on half the touches, only one fumble, and I think there's not necessarily a chronic issue here. I think he had some tough games. It was really two games: his Chargers game and the Broncos game, where he really had ball security issues as far as fumbling and whatnot. And then the Denver game was just really, I think, a bad game all around. And then for the drops, um, it like I said, two touchdowns that he dropped, but overall, I think really solid. Like I said, solid lead back. Seven drops throughout the year last year, and I hope he cuts that. I hope he cuts that number down in half to maybe four or five at most. But I think you got to give guys leeway at least a little bit to understand they're human. But when you got the end zone in front of you, you gotta catch that ball and get there. You're muted.
It makes me wonder, right? And I think this is the year. Sorry, I think this is the year where we're going to have a more definitive answer on things, right? And I look at guys like Dawson Knox, right, coming out of college. He didn't have a touchdown coming out of college, and we're like, how could this guy be this much of a mismatch nightmare and not get the opportunities to score, not get the opportunities to catch the ball? And then in the NFL, we see Dawson Knox, even though I think he's a solid player, we see Dawson Knox when he does get those consistent opportunities, there's drops. There's drops in those opportunities, right? With Dawson Knox, there are some concentration drops when you go to him 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. He's gonna drop a pass or two. That's what I noticed about Dawson Knox. And now
Right.
with James Cook, is like, okay, he don't have a lot of tread on his tires. He didn't get a lot of run with the Georgia Bulldogs in college. He was more back of committee. Why is that? He has explosive. He has speed. He has all the intangibles you need. Why he didn't get the amount of playing time that he probably should have. And now he's getting that opportunity in Buffalo. And I think now he's getting that major opportunity that he never had since probably high school. And now we're seeing some consistency issues with James Cook, right? So now this is the year where it's like, okay, do you need to be minimal on your opportunities so you could capitalize on them? Because when you get the brunt of the carries, you can't stay consistent, or is this just a mental hurdle in your development phase that you have to go through to be that great player we think you can be, to be that player that can reach that next level in his ceiling? And this is what we're going to find out this year. Can he stay, James Cook, stay consistent throughout the course of the season? Can he run between the tackles and keep that vision and stay consistent? Can he catch the ball out the backfield and stay consistent? Can he stay in the games, late in games, because he became a better pass protector and he can be out there with Josh Allen late in games? So these are some phases. Those three phases are something that I'm hoping that James Cook can progress with this season. And thus far, in the mandatory mini camps, it's definitely some struggles, and hopefully he can improve on those struggles.
And I think he will. Simply
I,
as that.
I think so too. I think so too. If you're now tuning in, welcome to the Founders Pod. ARich, Hakeem Richens, Lance Nelson is in the building, co-hosting with me tonight. Shout out DM3. We hope to get DM3 back sooner rather than later, but I think Lance is doing an excellent job. Me and him in terms of discussing a lot of intels with the Buffalo Bills. And the next thing we want to discuss is or the next thing I want to get into is the tight end, specifically Dalton Kincaid, right, Lance? Dawson Kincaid had 73 receptions, 673 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last year, I think he started to catch his footing a little bit later on in the season, and I believe this year is a year where he can make a pretty significant jump. And Bucky Brooks had an interesting quote on Kincaid. Bucky said, ESPN NFL Network analyst Bucky Brooks said, I won't be surprised if Dalton Kincaid ends up leading all tight ends in receptions and yards in 2024. And I think that was a big, big statement from Bucky, especially with the likes of Travis Kelce out there, especially with the likes of Sam Laporta out there that had 86 receptions, 889 yards, and 10 touchdowns last season. So I think that's a big take from Bucky. But Lance, do you think Dalton Kincaid can be the wide receiver one for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I've been talking to all off season. He's going to be the leading target uh, getter on this offense. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
lead the team in targets from a receiver standpoint. Only he had no game where he had less than 2 targets last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that's huge. 101 targets is going to go to 150 targets,
Mm.
let's say.
Mm-hmm.
He
I
already
like it.
had 81 catches, so that's 90, 95 or more is 80%. If he gets 50 more targets, I mean, you're talking about 40 more catches. So that's probably not going to be that great, but we'll see. I don't know that he's pulling in 120 balls this year, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
Uh, 777 yards. I expect to go right towards 900 to 1,000. For sure. So I think
Mm.
he's definitely going to be um, one of those guys that's a top three tight end in this league. And there's nothing that he's shown. He's shown durability throughout last season. Like I said, he's been targeted twice in every game last year, and I think that he showed out. He showed it well, and I don't think there's going to be any sort of sophomore slump with that. There can't be from a Bills standpoint. I don't think
Right.
they can afford that from him. But with Dawson Knox coming back as well, the usage of 12 personnel. One of the things that Dawson laid out during the minicamp interview, I thought was really cool, was that he thought like, hey, if we come out in 12 personnel, now you have to tell me, are you going to play a 4-3 or 3-4 defense where you're going to have to put a linebacker or a safety on
Mm-hmm.
Dalton Kincaid
Mm-hmm.
or myself?
Good
Or are
luck.
you going to play that nickel defense and have that guy to try to cover Kincaid? Now we're going to run the ball down your throat. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, with this offensive line retooled the way it is, I think that opens up that ability for them to bully some people and kind of maybe get people into those 3-4 or 4-3 defensive looks when they go 12 personnel. And that's going to cause Josh Allen to probably change the play at the line or go check to the play where it's Kincaid or Knox as the premier target on that play. And for me, I think that leads to a big uptick. And not only Kincaid being wide receiver one for the Bills, but Knox maybe having more of a role than people might expect this year.
Mm-hmm. He's not really
They think,
talked
oh, he's
about.
going to take a back seat, and then we got all the receivers, and then it's him. And it's like, no. One of the things that Scott Casson brought up on triple coverage last night is that Dawson Knox could be a top 5 fantasy player for the Buffalo Bills this year, and don't sleep on what his contribution could be for this offense.
Mm, mm. I like that, and I'm glad that we're um, diving into Dawson Knox a little bit as well, right? How do you think? What do you think about that dynamic in the second year between Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid? The first year, last year, it's more like we knew that Dawson Kincaid had special ability, probably greater than Dawson Knox, but at the same time, he's a rookie. He's getting his footing. Dawson Kincaid's a rookie. He's getting his footing. Dawson Knox is on a significant contract for a tight end and is being paid as if he's one of the top tight ends in the league. What do you think about that dynamic coming into this season? Do you think Dawson Knox himself even understands, like, okay, I know that I got the money here, but I know that Dawson Kincaid is the special is the go to guy out this group. How you think the dynamic and the friendship between Kincaid and Knox is developing and progressing throughout year two, coming into year
Yeah,
two?
Knox or Dawson Knox is the consummate professional, and everything that he's saying, lends me to believe that he's all on board for Dalton Kincaid having as much success as possible because he knows that as much success as Dalton's going to have, that there's still going to be 250 other balls that are going to go to others as well, and he can be a part of that. There's no shortage there. That this offense has to be diverse and that he's going to get his opportunities. And he probably knows that, he's missed out on some opportunities in his career, talking about Dawson, throughout the years, and that, he can capitalize on those and be, a big part of what this team wants to do on offense. I think he embraces the role of trying to be that hand in the ground tight end and pave the road for the running game, but he also knows that when the passing game goes off, if he's on the field with Dalton Kincaid, that only helps his opportunity to get open because people are going to be keying on these other guys and including Dalton. And so he's very supportive. And I think he's actually probably a good reason why Dalton's able to find success and be able to feel like himself throughout, his early career here.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like it a lot. Lance Nelson, ARich, Hakeem Richens found this pod. Appreciate everybody for tuning in thus far. A nice conversation about Dawson Knox and Dawson Kincaid for that matter. For that matter. Before I get into my next topic, let me get some comments up here, Lance. Let me get your thoughts, and let me get some comments up here, and let me get your input on these comments. First one. Um, Matt says, guys, somewhat of a relevant question. Do you think Joe Brady was in support of cutting bait on Stefon Diggs?
Had to be. You're not going to do it otherwise. And I think that, you know, at least as Bean lays out the plan for this roster construction, you know, if anybody's like pounding the table saying there's no way we can we can lose this guy, then he's not probably doing it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like, look, man, we're gonna have to figure out ways, and these guys are like, yeah, we're gonna have to we can do that and we'll accept the challenge and we'll go from there. I think that's 100% something that there was support from the staff on. Otherwise, I don't know that the move's made because I understand there being said it was a cap thing and we'll see, but um,
Mm-hmm.
there's no question that Stefan Diggs is vocal and that has that dynamic to rub people a certain way, even though he's highly productive. And
Mm-hmm.
although he has the stats for a season long uh, line for a wide receiver, his line going down the stretch last year just wasn't there. And for as vocal and as up in arms as he can be at times, he goes out and drops a big play in that Kansas City game that I think I really think that emotion to say like, oh, just a little, you know, indicating at all that it was anything but his fault on that. It should have been more like this rather than is saying,
Mm-hmm.
and that right there, I think is something that probably
Mm-hmm.
um, put the writing on the wall with the cap situation too. Obviously, the cap situation that Brandon B mentioned is factually part of it, but I think there's just some other nuance there that really lends itself to saying like, yeah, we're gonna be better addition by subtraction in this case.
And Mark says, I think the combination of a diversified wide receiver group, solid O line, better running game, added youth and speed, and excellent D tackle depth makes this roster makes this a better roster in 2024. And I like it. I like it if it all plays out this way, right, Mark? I like it if I like the diversified group. I think that we receiving group. I think we have a lot of dimensions in that wide receiver group, and if we can mold it together, we can do some things there. The line, Connor McGovern is moving over to center. I've been reading a lot of reports that he's excited about that. So, I don't think besides Morse getting hurt and John Feliciano taking some snaps at center, I don't think Josh Allen has much experience with any other player besides a Mitch Morse, right? So I think this is going to be a learning curve and a consistency kind of progression to develop between quarterback and center, and hopefully that shift doesn't change the outlook and production of the offensive line this season. I don't think that we're talking as much about the offensive line as we should. And I think we all assuming because they was good last year, they're going to be good this year. And I hope that's the case, but I don't know if that's the case. Shifting positions from guard to center, it sounds like and it seems like a seamless transition, but it's definitely a transition that can possibly affect the Buffalo Bills, and hopefully we can look like geniuses by making that decision. But excellent
Yeah,
comment,
Mitch
excellent
Morse
comment.
is a huge loss for this
Mm-hmm.
offensive line. There's no doubt about it. But,
Mm-hmm.
Connor McGovern was talking about how he helped Mitch make some of the calls throughout the year last year and things like that, and how much he's embraced really making those calls and having that role of being the leader in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of the offensive line. So for me, I'm really not concerned too much about Connor McGovern communicating
Mm-hmm.
with the guys, but I am a realist, and I think that it's definitely going to have some time throughout training camp, preseason, possibly into the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season where they're going to have to develop that chemistry, and we could see a drop snap or two throughout the early part of this thing working out when it gets in the high pressure. So they're doing all the things they can to
Mm-hmm.
take as many repetitions now as they
Mm-hmm.
can and all that. And even Connor McGovern was on one of the things where the Bills were calling, people to say I love you, and Connor McGovern couldn't get his wife to answer, but he called Josh Allen and told him I loved you. And just hearing that stuff, and whether it was staged or not
Mm-hmm.
for that piece, who is here nor there, I think it just goes to show, like, that chemistry is developing. I really like what I'm seeing, from my seat, between those two, and how they communicate, and how they have built a
Mm-hmm.
relationship already. And Connor McGovern talked about it a lot during his press conference, and I think Dawson Knox was sitting there with a juvenile look on his face, kind of, uh, one of those things where talk about hand placement underneath them and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
was, it's relevant, and you got to expect that there may be a few hiccups early on, but I just think this team, this roster, the way it's set up, for me, says they could go through some things early,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the way the rookies could develop, the way everything could pan out, is that I think they're going to be in the postseason. And then I think when they get to the postseason, some of these guys that maybe haven't made the biggest impact throughout the entirety of the season are going to be ready to
Mm-hmm.
make that big impact,
Mm-hmm.
come playoff time and things. So I really like the way the roster's shaped to be able to develop through, and they're starting with the Cardinals, who aren't necessarily the best team in the league either. So it gives them maybe a little bit of a chance to have a nice dress rehearsal that counts. In that
Mm-hmm.
they if things go the way the Bills should play the game, and they have the
Mm-hmm.
defense that that can take a lot of things away from the Cardinals, I think that it will allow the offense to have a little bit of breathing room early
Mm-hmm.
on to be able to get their footing.
And I like what Ray said. Right, Ray said I could see this team going 12-5, winning the division again just as easy. And I also can see the team going 9-8 and missing the playoffs altogether. Altogether, right? So I like that. I've heard some people say the same sentiments. So I do like that. The hope, right? The hope is the Buffalo Bills can win games while players are progressing and developing, right? So the hope is early on, Josh Allen can use his stardom and rally his troops, and we can depend on Sean McDermott, the coach-led defense, and Josh Allen on offense, where we can win games while guys are making little mistakes, but developing and progressing. And then when the season goes down the line and it gets later through the season and the rookies went through some bumps and went through some bruises, now they have a better understanding of the game, a better understanding of the speed of the game, and now they can continue to develop and progress and send that trajectory up for the Bills as the season gets later and later. So that's the hope. That's the hope for me. And I want to get one more comment up here, one more question up here, and then I want to move on. Appreciate the feedback from everybody. Got to get Susan up here to ask another question on Diggs. Would Josh have a say in not trading Diggs? I'm gonna go ahead and answer this if you want to give your feedback as well, Lance. I'm going to say Josh is Josh is going to give the political correct answer. I believe Josh has feelings. He's a human being, so his inner thoughts on Diggs, I'm pretty sure he has some. Those inner thoughts on Diggs, I don't think comes out to the public masses where Susan and myself and Lance would be able to hear. I don't think that Josh is that kind of guy, is that kind of player, is that kind of character. So to answer the question, no, I believe Josh is going to stay in his place as a quarterback and let Brandon Bean and let the guys that is hired to do those type of things do those type of things. Lance.
Yeah, they may ask him for his opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately any sort of actual like veto power of any nature doesn't exist, in my opinion. There, they'll take his opinion into consideration and do what they feel is best for the team. And I don't. I think those guys still have the utmost respect for each other. So you heard Diggs's
Mm-hmm.
comments, and
Mm-hmm.
Diggs doesn't necessarily have the personality trait to hold things back or like pull any punches in the media. He says really usually how he feels, in my opinion. It seems like he is usually pretty real on the microphone with the media just as much as he would what he feels in his personal life. So I think maybe maybe he's doing Josh a solid by not coming out in the media and saying anything, but I think they still have utmost respect at least professionally for each other, and whatever Alan does feel, uh, he's probably justified in.
ARich, Hakeem Richards, Lance Nelson. This is the Founders Pod. Let's move on, right, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to go to the wide receiver room, Lance, and everybody in the comment section. This is a good exercise for y'all as well, because we're going to do this one by one, right? So, Lance, this is what I'm going to do here. Wide receiver room. We're going to talk receivers. This first segment, this first part of the wide receiver room segment, I'm going to name a player, right? I'm going to name six players, the six who I think is going to be on the team. And I want you to let me know one, two, three, four, five, or six. What number in a perfect world, what number receiver, what pecking order would you put this receiver in a perfect world? So, for example, we all know AJ Brown is a wide receiver one. We all know Stefon Diggs is wide receiver two. Gabe Davis might be a wide receiver three, wide receiver two, depending on who you talk to, right? So, I'm going to list the names, and you're going to give me where on the pecking order in the wide receiver room in a perfect world would they belong, right? So, the first one, Keon Coleman, wide receiver.
Ultimately is going to be wide receiver one, not necessarily this year right out the gate, but I think his position naturally is going to be that lead wide receiver as he comes in. And I think he has the build and the things to be able to be most effective, kind of as that number one outside option. And I think he'll develop into that.
So would he is he going to develop into an overall wide receiver one, or is he going to develop into the wide receiver one for the Buffalo Bills, but not necessarily looked at as a wide receiver one across the league?
I think he can be a top 10 receiver in this league, which would be a wide receiver
The
one.
one, okay.
And for me, that's his ceiling to me. And I think Joe Brady's going to get that out of him, honestly. It may not happen right away, but I think by the time the playoffs roll around in this year, I really believe that you're going to see a guy in Keon Coleman, barring any injuries, obviously that really um, is a force come postseason for the Buffalo Bills, where they really are going to be tough to defend having that dimension on their team.
Now, and I hope you're right with Keon Coleman. I have him as the wide receiver one for the Bills, but matter of fact, let me not even say that, right? I have him as a wide receiver two for the Buffalo Bills. I hope he can progress or he will be that one and prove me wrong and prove you right. But right now, I'm thinking his overall skill set. He may be the one for the Bills in the receiver room, but I think overall, I think he's going to be a high upside wide receiver too. We'll see. Uh, Curtis Samuel.
Wide receiver three for me, I think that slot scat back type does a little bit of everything. He would be a wide receiver three in my book. I think he does those things well, and I'm just curious as to how much outside they're really going to put on him. Is as outside percentages did increase, playing outside last year as the season progressed, but I don't know that he's going to be much more than a wide receiver three for me.
Wide receiver three. Roy think Keon Coleman will be ultimately a wide receiver too. Let me get some more thoughts on here. What y'all think about Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel? I got Keon Coleman as a wide receiver two. Lance has him as a wide receiver one. Lance has Curtis Samuel as wide receiver three, and I agree with Lance. I was debating back and forth on where I wanted to put Curtis Samuel. Is he a fringe two? Is he a three? I think overall to get the best out of Curtis Samuel, I think that would be wide receiver three. Put him in the slot. You have two outside receivers that can work and get theirs, and now you have a guy like Curtis Samuel that can work the underneath. You have a guy like Curtis Samuel that can do a multitude of things, short, intermediate, and long, and in the backfield, and it's not a focal point because of the guys on the outside. And being that he's not a focal point because of those guys on the outside, it makes him even more dangerous. So I have Curtis Samuel as that wide receiver three. Um, Coleman, Roy Collins, Roy Collins, you flipping the script on me? You got Coleman as wide receiver three. Wide receiver three. Fran, is that wide receiver three for Curtis Samuel? Uh, and I'm going to get there. Let's get John right quick. Let's get John. John says Coleman is a two in my opinion. He's a rookie. Okay, John, I like it. I agree
Yeah,
with
right.
you.
And I think I don't get it twisted. I think right now he's definitely in that two or three slot for Keon Coleman. But my
Mhm.
point is, I think by the time playoffs roll around, you're going to see him develop and be certainly in that wide receiver one role for the Bills. And then as he progresses in his career, I think develops into that wide receiver one ultimately, as far as considered throughout the league as a number one receiver.
Khalil Shakir.
He's wide receiver two for me. I think they're going to play him outside. Ultimately, he could start the year as Bills wide receiver one and be in that main outside role. I think they're going to increase his outside snaps by a ton, and that he's going to really take a step in that. I think they really like Shakir. I think the reason why they were able to let Diggs go and the reason why we have this wide receiver room. And I'm not necessarily sold while we're talking about this, just to maybe put a little more confusion on it. I'm not sold that the Bills are done at wide receiver. I'm
Really?
not so sure that
Mm.
there isn't something in the works that could be done here. Brandon Ayuk is having a very difficult situation out there in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco, and
Mm-hmm.
that price has to be dropping by the day.
Mm.
And if it drops to a certain level, I gotta expect Brandon Bean to maybe go get his guy there. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. There's a
Mm.
lot of talk about it already, and it's kind of been put to bed because it hasn't happened yet. But I just don't think you can necessarily sleep on that happening. But anyways, going with the guys we got right now, Shakir for me is probably going to start the year playing that outside wide receiver one potentially, or them giving him a shot at it at the very least.
How do you feel about that? Because last season Khalil Shakir excelled as a slot receiver. And we're old school. I don't know the ages of everybody else in the comment section, but we grew up hearing, "Hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it." And now you're
Mm.
telling me this season that Khalil Shakir may be one of the main guys on the outside. And if that was to happen, how do you feel about that role for Khalil Shakir? Is that something that can be a seamless transition? Does that not worry you, or are you in the belief that if he's played and has success in a certain role like he did last year, he probably should continue to play that role? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they played him nearly 40% his first year in 2022 out wide, and his percentage in the slot increased, and his wide percentage was only 22.3 last year. But I
Mm-hmm,
really think that they had some games where he was in the 40s and 30s last year as well. So I think at times when the matchup was right, they tried to get him out there
mm-hmm,
and give him that opportunity when they could.
mm-hmm,
And I expect more of the same. I think he's just going to get more and more opportunity and more on his plate, and I am excited for him because I again, if you're looking at how could they trade Diggs and this and that, you have got to believe that they know this dude Shakir is a guy that's
mm-hmm,
gonna come in and be a real weapon for you, and that's kind of when they trade Diggs, that's where my mind goes. Like they really like Shakir a lot, and I think he, um, right now, is gonna be wide receiver one, and we'll see how it all plays out. The nice thing I think is if you're gonna go 12 personnel, you're almost having to then put Shakir out wide because it's then Kincaid in the slot with 12 personnel. It's going to be
mm-hmm,
tough to have. You don't really have two slot guys
mm-hmm.
when you have 12 personnel. So
Nice, nice. Let me get this comment up here, and then matter of fact, I'll get that coming out comment up there in a second. Chase Claypool
Claypool, a wide receiver five. I don't know.
is a wide
Uh,
receiver five. Now,
Lucky if
now,
he makes the roster.
but
Really, I
he's
don't know.
but he's the one that when you look at the wide receivers in terms of who's doing what and who's progressing, he's the name that I'm reading. He's the guy that stands out. Chase Claypool, 6'4", 238, 240 pounds. He's jumped around from Pittsburgh to Chicago to Miami. And I think with the Buffalo Bills, we're seeing, or even those t-shirt and shorts, with the Buffalo Bills, we might be seeing a sense of urgency from Chase Claypool, a sense of, let me get my shit together, because if I don't get my shit together, my next stop could be the UFL or the CFL. And from all the reports I've been reading, again, I don't go crazy in t-shirt and shorts, but somebody has to be doing well. They have to talk about somebody, and it's for me, it's kind of refreshing to see a Chase Claypool doing well, because if the guy that he is and the body that he possesses, if he figures it out, right, he can be a weapon for the Bills because of his size, his strength, and his speed. So, thoughts on Chase Claypool? Like you have him
Doesn't make the roster.
you don't think so?
No, I don't have him on the roster. We did our offensive
Really,
roster predictions last night. I got Coleman,
really.
Samuel, Shakir, Hollins, MVS, and Shorter.
Short. What is it about Justin Shorter that are you seeing that warrants a roster spot? Because I don't see it. I don't see it. What's your thoughts? Give me some thoughts in the comment section on Justin Shorter.
The fact that
Wow.
he's still here. I mean, the fact that they kept him around all last year, they're seeing something from him. They're keeping him around. I mean, they've got all these other guys. If they want to give them shots, why is he
Mhm,
still here? Like, yeah, he's not a bad camp body, I'm sure, but I
mhm,
just feel like, with the way, they've handled Shorter and things like that, it just lends me to believe that, he's one of the guys that they would like, and we'll see.
mhm. We definitely want to see
It's
their
it's gonna be
it's gonna be
like Brandon Bean said, this, or maybe it was Coach as well, McDermott saying that, this is certainly gonna be an interesting training camp to watch, and this room right here, this wide receiver room, is gonna be at the top of my eye.
Hey, Matt says Shorter plays special teams. Hey, and we all know that is a big proponent for Brandon Bean, Sean McDermott, and the entire Buffalo Bills staff. Is that good enough for him to warrant a roster spot? We
How
definitely
much
going to
of an
see.
impact can Claypool have in this offense? So if he's wide receiver 5, 6, and maybe he's ready to play special teams, but he's a few years older than Shorter. Why don't you just and Shorter? He's not gonna. In my mind, Claypool isn't gonna. If Claypool is able to, you know, what is he gonna be? Is he gonna be a wide receiver 2 or a 3 for you?
So I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking, because we have a guy in Keon Coleman who's a rookie, and we have a guy like Justin Shorter who's going into his second year but never really played in the NFL game yet. Those guys, they might have hiccups and learning curves along the way where we would hope, or I would hope, Chase Claypool has progressed from those trials and tribulations that Keon Coleman and Justin Shorter may run into now. And
Right.
if that is the case, then this is where Chase Claypool can be useful in the beginning of the season to help further along the progression of the player. If he's not ready yet, maybe he has to watch and get accustomed to the speed of the game, and for himself as an individual player, because he has his own things and his own issues that he's going through, being looked at as a bust and possibly being out the league. So I think, in my opinion, Chase Claypool can, if he is playing well and if he is not showing the same signs that got him ran out of Chicago and Pittsburgh and Miami. And if he's proved that he's a changed player off the field, I think on the field, in between the helmet through the ears, he can do some things for the Bills because of the size and the potential I think he brings. But it's definitely going to be interesting to say the least. I'm definitely intrigued to see how Justin Shorter's progressed from year one to year two. He seems as if he is a slow progressor. He's been in college 5-6 years. He went to Penn State, then he went to Florida 5 years. So maybe he's just a slow developer, and he can continue to do so on in the NFL circles. So we'll see what happens with the wide receiver room there. Last but not least, give me some thoughts. I'll put both of them in at the same time. MVS and Mac Hollins.
MVS is that, wide receiver 5. Um, he's going to be able to do some things. And when you need that other outside guy, you can rely on him. And then Mac Hollins, man, it's maybe I guess wide receiver 4, uh, wide receiver 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they're both, I'll give him wide receiver 4. I'll give MVS the respect, I guess, putting him up to wide receiver 4. I have him 5th on my list of receivers here. I have Coleman, Samuel, Shakir, Hollins, MVS, and Shorter, on my list as I listed them out. But I definitely think they're in that 4 to 5 range.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And getting into our own built-in Buffalo, maybe challenging me. I don't know, but I believe you're talking about Chase
Claypool
Claypool
there.
here.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think that this is a great comment right here. I think Claypool has only had one good QB, and that's Big Ben. His rookie season, he had 10 touchdowns, 800 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Claypool's rookie season. So if Keon Coleman gave me 800 yards and touchdowns this season, if he gave me Chase Claypool numbers this season, what Chase Claypool had as a rookie, I would be ecstatic. I would be ecstatic for those numbers for Keon Coleman. So we'll see. I do believe Chase Claypool has some talent. I do believe he can be a red zone threat. I do believe he could be a bully on the outside to smaller receivers. So we'll see. We'll see. Um, let's get one more comment up here. Matt Holman. It'll be either MVS or Claypool, not both. Ooh, I like it. I like it. We got some Justin Shorter fans here. I am not high on Justin Shorter at all. I'm not high on him. I think he's going to be. I think me and Roy Collins agreed there. I think he's going to be practice squad at best. But moving on. Let's talk about. Been on for about an hour and 9 minutes right now. It doesn't even feel like it. It's flowing well. We have 5 likes up there. I think is a little confusing. The math isn't math in. We have over 360 people in the chat, 5 likes. So if you're watching this, please, whatever platform, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, please take a second, give a like so we could build up that them algorithms, right? Moving on. Injuries, man. Injuries. Uh Mandatory mini camp, and we're already talking about a plethora of injuries from the Buffalo Bills. From Spencer Brown to Mike Edwards, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, Reggie Gilliam, Balen Spector. Balen Spector's always injured, by the way. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much longer Balen Spector has on this team because he's always injured. But nevertheless, Balen Spector, Dorian Williams, Edafon Ulafaccio, Rasul Douglas. Now, I know that injuries are a part of the game, but it always seems as it's part of the game when we're talking about the Buffalo Bills. Now, Lance, give me some thoughts. I give a broader question to injuries. Give me some thoughts on how do you feel about the Buffalo Bills and their injuries. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they make some changes to their staff because last year because of injuries?
I feel great, honestly. I don't think that there's really much to worry about. These guys, everything that has been said and everything I've read is that, these guys are going to be working towards or being ready at the beginning of training camp. So for me, I get it. Like, yeah, there's definitely some guys that maybe have some nagging things, but, uh, overall health of the team is great. And I don't think that anyone, those linebackers are dealing with anything serious. Shakir went down and doesn't have anything serious going on with him per Brandon Bean. So I guess for me, I'm not overly concerned. I think there definitely are some people like Mike Edwards that has a injury that you don't necessarily know exactly where he's at, and until we know come training camp, um, we'll see. There's still a really good safety out there in Justin Simmons on the free agent market, so we'll see if they need to reach out to someone like that. If Edwards, for whatever reason, uh, can't go, but from just, I mean, when you read the injury columns and you look at what's been said, to the media, it's for me, it's uh, all thumbs up and that things are going to be straightened out by the time they hit training camp, and we should have most, if not all, uh, being good to go, or at least ramping up in their progression, like a Milano coming back from an injury.
What is now? I know you said you feel great about it thus far, right? And it's nothing to be overly concerned about. It's injuries. You hate to see the amount of injuries that happen because you still have to have a mandatory minicamp. You still have to get players out there. They still have to be available. And Buffalo Bills had to, because of the injuries, they had to sign guys and get guys in on a trial basis just to fill up some spots. So what is the one position group you've seen last year? What happened with the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs, where the rash of injuries with the linebackers, it proved detrimental, right? Detrimental, right? What is the one position group this year, besides the obvious, besides Josh Allen, right? That
Mm.
we that can ill afford to have those rash of injuries like we did last year. What's the one position group?
Probably safety for me. And then, receiver is probably a close second there, because I think you kind of need, receiver, tight end, those, if we can lump those two in. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think safety is the biggest concern when you talk about getting, if you have if you're talking about multiple injuries there, I would be most concerned about safety.
I have to agree. I have to agree as well. Safety and maybe defensive tackle. And Daquan Jones has been injured back to back seasons. Ed Oliver, he's played the most snaps I believe last year that he's played since becoming since coming to the Buffalo Bills. So Austin Johnson, Deshaun Williams, I'm not too sure about. I don't know about the rotational defensive tackles. this season for the Buffalo Bills. I'm interested to find out, but for me, it would definitely be safety, and I think this close second would be DT, in my opinion. Um,
I like the depth at defense tackle, honestly.
you do you?
Definitely could, uh, you know, there's definitely going to be probably a drop. I mean, if Daquan Jones goes down, he's pretty dominant. He showed some dominance last year. I think you
Hmm.
want to have that, but I do like the signings that we made, and I really like Austin Johnson, Deshaun Williams, but even more so Dwayne Carter, the rookie. So um, none of those guys. Again, Daquan is a little bit of an anomaly there. He had great success last year, and I hope that we could see him in a full year because it just makes the whole defensive line better.
Now, while I'm talking about the D line, right quick, just a question popped up in my head. Are you concerned with how the Buffalo Bills are going to pressure the quarterback this season? Are you concerned with sacks and how we getting there at all? Leonard Floyd is not there. That those 10.5 sacks aren't there. We didn't get a guy to replace those 10.5 sacks. What are your thoughts on that? Any concerns getting to the quarterback?
Yeah, big concern there is making sure that we're going to be able to rush the passer effectively. Obviously, what Von Miller looks like is a huge question mark. What
Huge.
AJ Epinesa comes in as, uh, took a step last year, and can he
Hmm.
continue that and be a starter even and get double digit sacks from that? Is Greg Rousseau going to have an uptick in his pass rushing success? He definitely. Um, was in the vicinity a ton last year and that not didn't necessarily get all the stats that would lead you to believe he's a great pass rusher, but I think he can do that. I think he's been around the quarterback enough to be able to do that, and let's see if those numbers come to fruition, because someone's going to have to take down the quarterback, and not getting home and getting close isn't just going to be good enough. You got to actually bring him down and make sure you get that sack. So we'll see. I really like Javon Solomon, the rookie, and
Mm,
his tutelage from Von Miller. I think is going to be super helpful. But
yeah,
then
it is.
the two free agent signings, I think Tuhill had a great success when he was in a rotation where he wasn't the main guy getting all those snaps, and he was a rotational guy. That's perfect fit for the Bills because they have that heavy rotation. So if he can go 100% every time he steps foot on the field, he can have success. But when he was getting starter level snaps in Washington, he couldn't necessarily go 100%, and his numbers dropped tremendously. He didn't have a sack after Sweat and Young left Washington. So um,
I like
then
that.
I really like Dwayne Smoot as well. I think Smoot
Mm,
adds a nice veteran presence there, and
mhm.
barring any injury trouble, gives us a little bit of keeps that rotation fresh and gives us that upside that we need there.
So you have Casey Toohill making the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Well, you'll have to watch Triple Coverage Podcast next Friday and find out our defensive
I
roster.
like it.
Uh, we got our 53 man part one last night and the part two defense
Next week,
next week. So
shameless
it's
plug. I like it. I like it. I like it. Moving on. Rasul Douglas. He, in terms of in-season trades, Rasul Douglas is, I think, the obvious best in-season trade for the Buffalo Bills in the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era. Um, he came in and he made instant impact. He made game changing plays. You know, he got hurt that at the end of the last year, which I think hampered him some, right? But overall, with the Buffalo Bills, 4 interceptions, 1 sack. He had a touchdown, 2 forced fumbles. He was just making a bunch of impact plays, and he took over the role for Tre'Davious White in terms of being that number one corner for the Buffalo Bills. So, Lance, I want to ask you, do you think the Bills are doing the right thing by letting the contract of Rasul Douglas play out? Or do you believe that the Buffalo Bills maybe goofed up a little bit and he should be re signed to an extension right now? What are your thoughts? Which way are you leaning with? Rasul Douglas.
Yeah, I think that he could be still having those talks, or his agent could still be having those talks to try to figure out a number. I think being in this spot now, um, the Bills would be foolish not to get him locked up there. I'm not sure, because you got Benford and Elam behind him and not really much going on. Like obviously, Teron Johnson being the nickel corner and is top of the league type talent, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
have that on the outside necessarily. Even if Benford is good, I'm not necessarily thinking he's a top CB1.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll see if Elam takes a giant leap to figure that out, but I don't see necessarily him being a CB1 right this moment either. And we'll see if that changes through his development. But Douglas is clear cut, could be a CB1 on this team for years to come, and we'll see what what the Bills decide. I mean, their MO for players seems to be letting them hit the end of their contract and then seeing what they can do. I mean, they did that with Tremaine Edmonds and many others. So
Mm-hmm.
they did it with AJ Epinesa, right? So let's see. That seems to be the way they want to play things, but um, I think it's a little bit of a mistake. I think you should keep trying and keep uh, going after Rasul and seeing if you can get him re-signed before the end of this season.
Yeah, I'm wishy washy with that. I'm on the fence with that. First of all, I like what you said about Christian Benford. I'm not sure if he's a bona fide number one cornerback, but I do believe he's a hell of a number two cornerback. I do believe
Yeah.
Christian Benford is leaps and bounds better than Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace.
Mhm.
I think we have an upgrade there.
Combined.
Yeah, I think we have an upgrade there. Getting with Rasul Douglas, part of me is like, you know what? We probably should have signed him to that extension. We have young players in Christian Benford and Kyer Elam that's going into year three. Next year, they'll be going into their final year. And we don't really have much beyond those guys, right? But then I look at it in terms of we wanted to start this youth movement this year, right? We in this transitional phase in terms of starting a youth movement. We've made mistakes, in my opinion, in the past, signing older players to lucrative contracts, and I don't think that works out all the time. Especially God bless his heart, Von Miller. He didn't mean to get hurt, but he was 32 years old at the time he signed his contract, right? So I'm
Mhm.
thinking, Rasul Douglas, he's turning 29 this year. He's not a spring chicken. And these are the ages 29, 30, 31. He probably does have 2, 3 good years left, but these are the ages where players start to get on that decline. Now, how steep that decline is dependent on the player. So I'm not opposed to the Buffalo Bills kind of waiting this out and seeing how things progress with Rasul Douglas, and if it works out where he plays well and prices himself to a lucrative contract that we can afford, then go ahead. Let's go ahead and do it. If he doesn't perform well, we can either use that to get him back on a cheaper deal, or we can look elsewhere. So as much as I like Rasul Douglas, I kind of like that he's playing under his final year of his contract, because it's going to give him some added motivation, knowing his next contract might be his last.
Yeah, for sure. And he played it off. He's like, "What? This is my last year of my contract," in his press conference. So it's all good. I mean, it's business, and I think that he knows that. And I'm not too concerned about what's going to happen with his contract. I think he's going to come in and work hard and play well. He talked about not really knowing exactly where he needed to be all the time and just was relying on some guys to kind of help him last year. So
Mhm.
this year going in, having a full understanding of what is needed of him and when, I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. And then we'll see what happens down the road. But for this year specifically, I like where he's at, and again, it's the MO of this regime. They're not going to necessarily give those extensions out as much as they maybe did early on. I think the first couple of years they might have been more willing, but now they've really pulled the reins back and shown that they're going to let you finish your contract, see where the market is, and then if they can fit you in on your value or maybe get you to take a little discount somehow, then they'll go ahead with that. Otherwise, they'll find another way and either draft or make a move for the right guy that fits what they need.
And I think last year was more about Rasul Douglas coming over, finding his footing, getting accustomed to the city, getting accustomed to the players, the coaching staff, the scheme. He spoke about looking to Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer a lot in terms of what to do, where to be in defense. And I think that was last year. And being that the Buffalo Bills now are in that transitional phase, being that Rasul Douglas has been in Buffalo for a year now, and has a whole offseason and training camp to completely indulge himself as a member of the Buffalo Bills organization. This is the year where we need Rasul Douglas to show them leadership qualities that he showed in Green Bay. He has to be the Rasul Douglas leader that he was with the Green Bay Packers last year, with the Buffalo Bills this year. And I think that is something that I think he knows and is aware of as an individual. And I think that is something that he is going to wear close to the vest, and he's going to show those leadership qualities in out the locker room, on the field, and off the field as well. So thoughts on Rasul Douglas. Moving on. Third time's a charm for Kyer Elam.
I think
Is
so, man. I
You
really
think
think
so?
so.
You think so? I think he's getting a better grasp of things by the conversation, by his interviews. But of course, he's going to have to put that together between the ears on the football field. And every time last year or in the past, where it seems as if uh, I might have been ready to give up on Kyer Elam, he would make a big play in a big moment. And it's like, okay, maybe this kid has something. So thoughts on Kyer Elam going into year three?
Yeah, Kair, obviously I have a little bit of a rapport with Kair, having done some things with him in the off seasons and whatnot. I'm very grateful for him. He
Mm-hmm.
was able to get me some friends and family past his training camp, and was able to get my son was able to get Josh Allen's autograph, things like that. So
He's good.
so
He's
I'm
good
a
with
little
Bill
bit
some Buffalo. He's good with Bill some Buffalo
I'm a
forever.
little bit biased. I'm gonna just admit right out of the gate, but spending time with him, being around his parents at these events and things like that, he's got um, the right approach. He's got the right mental outlook. He's talking with guys like Stevie Johnson, who, if anybody, sees anything that Stevie Johnson puts out, or if you've been around Stevie Johnson, Stevie has the mental side of this thing figured out. And I think that's what made him such a great professional. And so Kair's got that behind him as well. And Kyer's got a great outlook, a great approach every day, and he's not going to give up on himself by any means. So, I expect, things to him to keep working, and I think that, the third year could definitely click for him, and I think he has the opportunity to allow the Bills to not have to extend or re-sign Rasul Douglas. I think
There it
he could be
is.
that good.
There it
I
is,
think
right
he
there.
could be good
There it
enough
is.
to where they aren't worried about that, and they're worried about extending him instead of Douglas. And we'll see. Being younger and everything like that, having the years in the system, that could be their play. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Obviously, there's nothing in the previous years that tell us that that necessarily could happen, but you mentioned he's shown flashes and that he's when he's been healthy, and I think there's been some injury there and things like that have hindered his performance at times. And I think that mentally, I don't ever question anything from Kyrie Elam. I think he's one of the smart players that we have, and the Bills target these type of guys that are smart and able to handle things mentally. And he's got all the right, things in the backing him, and he does things the right way all the time. And I think that that's gonna show out there, barring an unfortunate type of injury or whatnot this season. I think he surprises a lot of people.
And I think he does as well. I'm hoping he does, and I'm thinking he does as well, man. Kaya Elam, he's a guy that it if things come together how it's supposed to come together through perseverance and hard work, it should come together for Kyer Elam because he's a hardworking individual or on and off the field. He's a film junkie. He has his notebooks. He's writing down plays and what he did wrong, what he did right, how he could get better. And I think after a while, it's going to show in terms of his play. And sometimes it may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years. We've seen it with Spencer Brown. It took him 3 years. Now we're hoping on the defensive side of the ball, it can do the same thing, or we can do the same thing with Kyer Elam and continue to develop. Where now in year three, everything is starting to click and come together. Because just like Spencer Brown, what did he have? He was struggling. Spencer, he was struggling, but what did he have? He had all the tools and traits to be successful. He just had to mold it together and put it together. And the same thing applies to Kyer Elam. He's 6 foot 6'1". He runs a 4.340. He has a great vert. He has all the measurables and tools physically, and now the mental aspect of the game and putting everything together to mesh with those physical tools is what we hope to see this year from Kyer Elam. And I think in year three, this is the year we see it. We're definitely going to see, but I'm excited to see the development and the progression coming from Kyer.
Yeah, it's, put up or shut up here. There's no two ways about it. It's going to be no excuses. You hope that he can stay healthy because that's the one thing that's like whether you stay healthy or not, like you can't get another pass. Like we've given you that pass, and now we've
It's
got to
time.
go for we got to go forward, assuming that this just maybe they give him a fourth year, given that he has the first round pick and being a fifth year option. So if there was some sort of another injury popping up here, maybe they push that into year four. It's going to be tough, but I think given the assets spent, they're gonna. I mean, it's not like they're gonna cut him. I don't think, but I think it, I'll be a little bit sick if another injury pops up and that kind of derails anything. I hope that he can really stay healthy and just show us what a healthy Kyer Elam gives us, whatever that may be. I'm not saying as good, bad, or otherwise, but show me what a healthy
Healthy
Kyer
Kyer
Elam
Elam
can
gives us.
do. You know,
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. ARich, Hakeem Richards. This is the Founders Pod. Lance Nelson has joined me in a podcast that's it's run real well right now, over an hour and a half, an hour and 32 minutes and 48 seconds to be exact. And I want to get into the last topic of discussion for the night. Lance, what the hell is going on with Tyler Bass? It seems as if he's falling off a cliff. And I'm concerned that the Tyler Bass we once knew in year one, year two, year three is no longer the Tyler Bass we know in year five. What's going on with Tyler Bass?
yeah, one corner over here, he hits a 70-yard field goal. And then another one over here, he's missing three within 45 yards in a session. So obviously, what's left in my brain is that incredibly disappointing end to the Kansas City Chiefs game where he misses that kick. And there's just a very big uncertainty for me that whether or not he's going to be able to continue to have the success he did have 2 years ago, where he was really money, I think. And he showed flashes where he can get into that point where he's can't miss type of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
man,
He's
I
fell
don't
off
know.
a cliff,
All
bro.
this talk about, holders and stuff like that, I
I don't want
just
to hear
think
that.
it's just nonsense. It's like,
Nonsense. Nonsense, bro.
uh, you know, put your head down and make the kick. And I was looking at the free agent list of kickers. I mean, recently because of that, and it's tough. I mean, there's not that much out there. We'll see what Jack Browning has as far as kicking skills. I think he's more of a punter, but we have him in house to see what he's able to do. And if they brought in anything uh, to compete in kicking throughout training camp, that might be a telltale sign of where they're at. But right now, they're not giving him much competition. I think they're going to see what he can do this year, and if something melts down catastrophically, they'll have to figure out what's going to happen from there.
Because this year I believe the dead cap for Bass is 5 million, so that's significant. That's steep, especially for a kicker. So this year I don't think they're going to do anything in terms of letting or cutting a Tyler Bass. But this is the year where if he doesn't perform, I can see this year being the last year for Tyler Bass on the Buffalo Bills roster. I hope that I'm wrong with what I'm about to say, but I'm not sure if Bass is the guy anymore. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. Like I said, that taste, that feeling I had um, in Orchard Park in January, it was is what it is. It's one kick, one mistake. Everyone's human, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and with inconsistencies, and everyone has bad days too. So I mean, it's a practice and mini camp. We'll see. Again, all the stuff that's happening in shorts and t-shirts and out here. I mean, kicking really should be easier in that respect. There should be little to no pressure, but I mean, could have just had a bad day too. What maybe uh, had allergies or anything, and could have led to those type of things happening. So I can't judge too hard on a mini camp practice. I want
Mm-hmm.
to see um, I want to see what's going to happen here in training camp and once the pads are on, and then in the preseason games and see where we're at.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see. Um, get one more comment up here. Bradley, what's up, Bradley? Different holders. That's the difference. Ever since Sam Martin has been holding, he was 7-7 with Brown and plus the 70 yarder. Now when he got paid that contract, he's not getting none of that money to the holder. And I understand, be, having a placeholder is important, but in my opinion, I watch the rest of the league. We are the only fan base breaking down a kicker's game with a holder. Like it's come to that much where a holder and is being talked about and being topics of discussions. It's never been topics of discussions to this degree before. Now, as much as I agree in terms of being a holder is important. You want to have the laces facing out. You want to get it down and all that stuff. The kicker at the end of the day has to perform. He has to be able to kick those kicks. He has to be able to make those kicks. A 44-yard kick. I cannot blame a holder for missing a 44-yard kick. And I know it's not an easy kick, but it's a makeable kick. And Tyler Bass has to make those kicks. Tyler Bass missing field goals from 35, 45, 55 yards in mandatory minicamp. To me, I'm concerned because it's a kicker. You can kick throughout the entire course of the off season and try to perfect your game and get better and improve your game. And the fact that he is basically taken off where he's left off last year is definitely concerning for me, especially a guy that that got his second contract, a guy that's being paid like one of the better kickers in the NFL. When you're being paid like one of the best kickers in the NFL, I cannot blame the holder for your lack of success. Now, Bradley, I understand and I agree with you 100% that it's important of a position for a placeholder to be in, and they get it right. But ultimately, it's up to that field goal kicker, in my opinion, to make those kicks, especially the makeable ones, the 44-yard kicks. So, my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's made plenty of kicks with Sam Martin as the holder. You
Hmm.
know, he's
Hmm.
83%
Hmm.
last year. So
Which is
like
horrible.
Sam Martin, you know, by the Kansas City game has had to have figured out how
Right,
Tyler
right,
Bass wants the ball held. I
right.
just don't understand that you're talking about a professional athlete here
Hmm.
holding the
Hmm.
football
Hmm.
and a
Hmm.
kick in the postseason when the guys held the ball all year long.
Hmm.
There's no question about,
Hmm.
you know, how to hold a ball here. In my opinion, I don't understand. I mean, that he just missed the kick, and it is what it is. It's
Hmm.
unfortunate, but had 5 misses all of last year, one from within 40 yards, two under from 40 to 49, and then two 50 plus. So the 50 plus, I'd be like, whatever, but and then it's 3 misses outside, under 50 yards, and the biggest one being a 44 yarder, like Akeem said.
Hmm.
I don't know, man.
Hmm.
He is what he is, and we need to be able to make that kick at
Especially,
home at home in a playoff game. We got to be able to make that kick.
especially when the Philly game last year, they had their kicker in the craziest conditions, drill a 60-yard field goal in the wind and rain and all these that I wouldn't even think of running the field goal kicker out on the field at that point. Not only did they run their field goal kicker out on the field against the Bills in those weather conditions, but he drilled a field goal that I thought in my mind that he had no chance of making this field goal. And then when it went in, it was like only the Bills would witness something like this. But uh, that's
Misses in the 2 misses in the Pittsburgh game as well, and the
yeah,
miss in the when the lights are bright and you got to be on. I can't have our kicker in the postseason going 2 for 5
right,
from field goals, and
right,
you know I, this just can't happen.
absolutely right, man. ARich, Akeem Richards, Lance Nelson, the Founders Pod. This has been an excellent show. We have over 420 people that's still watching. We've been on for an hour and 42 minutes and going on 20 seconds, 21, 22, 23 seconds right now. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. It's been an excellent show. Excellent feedback, excellent conversation throughout the course of the show, and I hope everyone has enjoyed just as much as I enjoyed doing it. So, Lance, appreciate you, my brother. Is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate everyone watching. Check out all the great Built in Buffalo content throughout the week. Buffalo Against the World and Going Deep podcast, The Hoof,
Mm-hmm.
triple coverage we got, and then
Mm-hmm.
our social media pages all throughout. Bringing some great content to you guys, and feel free to join in the conversation on any of those posts, comment, and like to interact with that. So appreciate all the support here and everyone watching. Be safe for the rest of the weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody for watching. Lance said it best, man. We're going to continuously put out content each and every day. Right now, we don't have a Tuesday slot, but when the season rolls around, we will have a Tuesday slot filled. We just looking for just the right match, the perfect parent, so we can continue on the trajectory we've been on these last couple of years. And a lot of news that's going to be coming out sooner rather than later. This man Lance is an incredible asset to the Bills and Buffalo family, and the things that he's been able to accomplish as the president of Bills and Buffalo is nothing short of remarkable. And we wouldn't be in certain places and spaces without Lance Nelson. And I'm going to be excited to deliver some news. We all are going to be excited to deliver news that we've had brewing for some while sooner rather than later. But for now, ARich, Akeem Richens, Lance Nelson, Founders Pod. Look out for Izzy Red Zone Report tomorrow, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody, go Bills.
Go Bills.